What's up, boys? Hope you're all okay. Today I'm going to be going through the new Valorant patch notes 2.0 in anticipation of the new episode 2, which is coming out today if you're watching the video. Thanks for tuning in if you are watching today. Today, I'm going through the patch notes. It's quite sort of simple sort of patch notes. It's not ridiculously extensive, but from what I've seen and when I've read through it, it seems really well thought out and really well balanced. I'll obviously put up on the screen for you sort of a brief summary of everything that's sort of included. The main one which I wanted to talk about first was actually the nerf of the classic pistol, because I think this is the thing that's going to actually make the biggest impact going into episode 2. Now, if I go through the patch notes itself and go sort of through the little details, you'll see why I've sort of highlighted that as the first thing that I wanted to sort of go through. Looking through at the weapon updates, the first thing that you can notice is that the jump-in error is increased from 0.4 to 1. So the error of fire when you're jumping or mid-jump is over doubled. So it wasn't ridiculously accurate anyway. I never really sat trying to do jump shots. If you try and do jump shots, it's more just to sort of peek, sort of see where your enemies are, get some more information. You don't really peek to try and sort of take people's heads off, because it's just not going to happen, because the accuracy is just not good enough. But jumping error has been increased from what it was before, which I thought was absolutely dreadful, to over double. So it's gone from 0.4 to 1. Which, again, I think it's just going to stop that sort of thing where somebody just sort of jumps up and randomly one-taps you, sort of like randomly hits a headshot and absolutely destroys you while you're weak in the early rounds. The next main thing that I really wanted to sort of address, having read the patch notes, is actually the firing consecutively. So the firing error now jumps up at a lot bigger rate. So basically it goes from sort of 1.9 for the first burst, going up to 2.5, and then it jumps all the way up to 6. So basically that sort of first and second shot is going to be pretty accurate, you know, at that sort of close range, that sort of 10 to 15 meter range. With the classic pistol, you're still going to be able to hit some pretty good shots. But if you're going to jump around the corner and start spamming, as soon as you get to that third and on, then bullets are start going to go sideways. It's going to be like using a frenzy at all times. So that's obviously quite interesting to sort of note. And I really quite like this buff, because for me, the classic pistol is quite powerful as it stands. Obviously, it's now getting the nerf, which I'm quite happy about, because it's available, it's free. It's unfair that you can sort of get absolutely destroyed in the early rounds, just because somebody's clicking faster and they're just spraying at you. What's happening now is Riot Games are more focusing on actually opportunity to get rid of that sort of spamming clicks and more sort of work on actually that aim and peeking your corners correctly. If you're a tap firer anyway, you're going to actually enjoy this, because you're going to be able to outshoot most of your opponents that come around the corner absolutely spraying. With the classic pistol as well, there's obviously the right click, which is basically almost a bit like a shotgun spread. So it has 3 bullets that fire out. Now, this can be ridiculously powerful at close range. So sort of with this sort of 5 to 10 meters range, you can pretty much hit 2 or 3 of the shots being a headshot. So you can pretty much turn around a corner at 5 meters and one-tap somebody in the first round, especially when they haven't got a shield. So obviously that is ridiculously powerful. Now, fair enough if you hit your first shot, but the idea behind this is also increased. So obviously if you're going to run around the corner and absolutely spam the right click button again, and you're going to try and like shotgun somebody's face, the first shot will be pretty accurate, first couple of shots, but after that it's going to go up ridiculously. As I mentioned before, it goes from a sort of a 1.9 burst to a 2.5, and then it over doubles that and goes to a 6, which is ridiculous, which I'm really happy about, because again, it's just going to stop that sort of jumping around a corner, absolutely spamming, hip firing, and just absolutely taking your head off when there's no skill involved. It's just pure luck, and the bullets just seem to land on your head every time. So that's the main reason I wanted to focus on that one first. I think it's going to make quite a big change to the early rounds. Usually what I like to do is I'll go, okay, first 2 rounds, I'm probably going to do a bit of a save round. I'll sort of use the classic pistol, I'll buy a couple of abilities, a little bit of shield, and then by the 3rd round, I'll be able to get a Vandal, full shield, a decent amount of my abilities, and I've got a really strong loadout, really strong abilities, good shield, and set yourself up and you set your team up ready to go on that win streak. Now though, with the classic pistol not being as strong, and I'm not being able to bank on them early couple of kills, I'm probably going to be sort of mixing up the way that I play the first couple of rounds. I'll probably be spending my money more on, obviously probably shield is probably the smart thing to do, but I might be sort of investing in the Ghost a bit more, because the Ghost obviously hasn't had any sort of changes to it that we can read in the patch notes. The ability to sort of tap fire with the Ghost is still going to be ridiculously powerful. and it might even be worth taking the shorty, as it's going to be a lot more accurate and do a lot more damage at that close range, because you're not going to get that spread or bloom from the bullets as you jump around the corner. You're just going to get that controlled shotgun fire. So it's going to make a big change to early rounds, and I'm quite happy about that. It's sort of mixing it up and making us think on our feet a little bit. The next thing I wanted to talk about was actually Brimstone. So Brimstone's had quite a big buff, which I'm really happy about. I think from what I can sort of gather, it's to do with the fact that Brimstone has so much potential, but nobody really uses him. He's not got a high click rate when you're choosing him, especially in competitive. And it's simply because his abilities are decent, but they're not quite enough to sort of overshadow other classes, such as, for example, Omen. Obviously, both classes have smokes. However, you'd probably take Omen because it's just more powerful, it's quicker, and the abilities generally are a bit more useful. Now, the sort of changes that they've made to Brimstone, the first one is to do with the stim beacon. So instead of having to pull it out and having that animation of clicking it and throwing it on the floor, the understanding is it has no equip time. You basically click it and it is active straight away. Click, it's done. Because the one thing that I usually find with abilities is that you sort of like go to activate your ability, and in that split second you get really bad timing. Somebody walks around the corner, and then before you know it, you're dead. They've taken your head off. So not having that equip time, I think is going to make sort of a big difference, especially for something that I don't actually think the stim beacon does that much. It's something that I don't really buy. I don't really think it's worth it. I think all it does is increase your fire rate by sort of 0.15, which is decent, but I don't think it's really that powerful, especially not to get caught pulling it out and then getting shot at the same time. Another buff that they've made to Brimstone is the Molotov. The cost at the moment is 300. It's going down to 200. So it's obviously being reduced by a third. Now, I think that's going to make quite a big difference, because one thing when I'm playing Brimstone, I'm a little bit hesitant to use the Molotov, because it is quite powerful. It's not ridiculously powerful. I think it's quite a well-balanced thing. But because it is that sort of 300, you're almost like you're thinking too much about whether you want to waste it or not, because it can be quite expensive, especially in them early rounds. But now that it's gone down to 200, you're pretty much going to be able to use it every round and be able to utilize it, therefore making Brimstone a better class to use, because you can actually use your abilities without having to sort of think too much about it, and a little bit more plausible to be able to pick and play with. I mentioned before about how you'd probably rather pick Omen, because it's just a better class overall, especially to do with smokes. There's been quite a significant buff with the smokes to Brimstone. So the first one that's to note is that the cast range has been increased. It's been increased by about 20%, which is going to make quite a big difference. It's going to open up lots of different possibilities for different plays. There's one sort of angle that I always get hit by when I'm playing certain maps. There's always like a far window or a long push, where there's always somebody waiting there with a vandal, or they're waiting with an operator or a marshal, and it's just a bit too out of reach for the Brimstone to be able to drop that smoke in place. Whereas now the map is that sort of 20% bigger, so you can get them smokes a little bit further. It's going to open up different plays. Now, also with the smokes, they're not just be able to cast them further, but you can also it's also going to increase the duration. So at the moment, it's currently 14 seconds for the duration of the smoke. It's now going up to 19 seconds. So again, it's making it more plausible that smoke's going to stay up for longer. It's going to give you and your team more cover to be able to make different plays and set yourself up for either the attack or the defense. The other little buff that they've made for Brimstone as well is that usually there's a little sound that's made when you're confirming the smokes locations. That's basically been eradicated now, so when Brimstone uses the smokes, he's going to be completely silent and he's not going to give away his position to any of the enemies. I think this is really good because how powerful sound is in Valorant. You know, footsteps, if you've got a half decent headset, you know exactly where somebody is. You can literally go, right, they're immediately to my left, they're above me, they're below me, they're behind me. So hearing little noises like that can give away a location. And again, that was another reason to not use Brimstone, because you kind of give away your position using something that isn't even that powerful. But now that that's been changed and it's silent, again, that sort of overall buff, it makes Brimstone actually look like a really enjoyable and really useful character to have on your team. So on the flip side of that, so they've obviously sort of made Brimstone more appealing, made him more useful. They've kind of nerfed Omen a little bit. The nerfs that they've done are quite specific, and I think they're quite well balanced, if I'm quite honest. I don't think it makes it so that Omen's unplayable. I don't think it's gone to that sort of stage, but I think it's gone so it makes you think twice about using Omen. So the first one to note is that Paranoia, it's currently 200 to buy, which is dirt cheap for what it is. It's now going up to 400, so it's doubling the price. So it's going to make you think twice about it. Now, I think this is actually really good, because one thing that I absolutely hate when I'm on a team with my mates is you're doing sort of an aggro push, and then you get hit by Paranoia, and then you're really hesitant to peek around a corner, because you don't know whether it's to your left, to your right. You don't want to peek around, turn the wrong way, get shot in the back. So from an Omen point of view, it's ridiculously powerful. It can literally stop a whole team in their tracks or confuse them. It makes them peek when they shouldn't be peeking. It makes them go ways that they shouldn't be going. And it makes for quite an easy pick, and it's so powerful. So doubling the price of that, I think, is actually a really good balance, because it makes you it makes it less spammy, where every round when there's an Omen on the other team, you literally get hit by Paranoia. Every single round. You just get hit. And then you're sitting there and it stumbles the attack. So now, especially as an Omen, especially with the changes to the classic pistol, it's going to make you think twice as an Omen in the early rounds. Are you going to splash out on Paranoia, or are you going to splash out on a better weapon? Because obviously with the classic pistol now being sort of nerfed so much, you're going to be thinking, well, do I want to get Paranoia? Am I going to sort of help the team out and sort of prevent their attack? Or am I going to sort of take that personal change and go, oh, actually, I'm going to invest in maybe a Ghost or a Shorty? It will make you think twice about what your sort of standard setup will be. The other little change to Omen is dark cover. So the smoke that you send across the map, instead of it being at a speed of 4,000, it's now been decreased to 2,800. So it's basically sort of been reduced by just over a quarter. I don't really think this is going to make a ridiculous sort of notable difference. But again, it stops that sort of immediate thing where you're sort of about to peek a corner and suddenly there's just smoke on you, like out of nowhere. It just absolutely hits you. I think it's going to give you a little bit more reaction time, a little bit more chance to sort of figure out what you're going to do, and it means that you're less likely to get caught with your pants down, basically. A good thing to note as well is that while there aren't any other changes at the moment to any other classes, Riot Games have also acknowledged that while there might not be any updates just yet for Viper, they want to take the opportunity to say they've got their eye on her, and they believe that she's actually underperforming, and are looking at changes for her in the new year, which I think is quite interesting. For me, Viper is quite a powerful class. It's got some really good abilities, so the fact that they think she's underperforming, and I'm actually quite interested to see what sort of changes they've got their eye on. Now, obviously, there's been a few changes to the classes, but obviously there's quite a notable introduction of Yoru. I think this class looks absolutely wicked, and I think the abilities are so interesting. So let's break them down. So the Q ability is called Blindside, and it's basically a flashbang. It's the simplest way I can put it. It's quite an interesting sort of unique thing. So in a recent patch, they actually buffed the flashes, making them more powerful. The interesting thing about Blindside is it doesn't actually activate until it's bounced off a surface. So that actually sort of opens up some opportunities to have some really unique plays and actually hit some really unique angles. From what I can see, you can throw it quite far. However, can't throw it completely across the map. There is sort of like a cutout time. I'm not sure exactly on the distance or timing. It seems about sort of 5 seconds. So obviously it's more of a close range kind of weapon. The E ability is called Gate Crash, and it's basically kind of like a teleporter. So you can either place it down next to yourself and then move away, and then you can press E again and you'll teleport back to that little portal that you've placed before. Also, there's an interesting sort of feature with it. It seems that you can send it across the map. So you can basically fire this portal across the map and it will basically just walk away from you in a straight line. And then if you press E, you will teleport to where it is. So that sort of opens up opportunities to have some really interesting and unique plays. The C ability is the one that I'm most interested in. I think it's absolutely amazing from what I can see. It's called Fake Out, and it basically mimics footsteps across the map, which for me, considering, as I mentioned before, how sound is so powerful in Valorant, from when you hear a footstep, you know exactly where somebody is, and you can figure out what side of the map people are. You can sort of hear multiple footsteps. You know that there's 3 or 4 different enemies nearby. And from that, you can communicate to your team whether you need to rotate or what tactics you need to play. I mentioned how sort of powerful Paranoia is in the way that it makes you think that enemies are there with their footsteps, with the gunfire. So while fake out, it doesn't look like you can send it sort of round corners or anything. It looks like it is a straight line. It looks like it goes for quite a long period of time. From what I can see, it looks like it goes for about 12 seconds, which I think is quite a significant amount of time for an ability to be active for, especially something that has such a disorientating effect as well. The interesting thing to note about fake out is the fact that from early footage, it suggests that it sets off turrets. For example, the Killjoy's turrets. It may also set off alarm bots as well, and things like Cypher's tripwire, which again gives that sort of opportunity to disorientate the opposition. The interesting thing to note about the footsteps, though, in terms of setting things off, it appears that it will only set off the Cypher's tripwire if the tripwire is placed at sort of ankle height or pretty much very low to the ground. Now, I've never really seen many plays where Cypher plays at that low ground, so it's probably quite important to keep placing that tripwire at sort of waist height, which is the most optimal height to place it in. But that makes it quite interesting as a counter to Yoru, because if you hear footsteps but your tripwire doesn't go off, from that you can track the footsteps back and get valuable information about where Yoru might be or sort of plays that they might be playing. Now, before I move on to the ultimate, I was actually quite worried before I actually read the ultimate that it was going to be really powerful, because for me, I think the Yoru's abilities actually look really powerful. There's so much potential. Obviously, it kind of hits like multiple dimensions, because it's literally got a flashbang, which obviously does your visual. It's got the footsteps, which obviously does your sound. It's got the teleport as well, so you can literally get in behind enemy lines, or you can teleport to different places. So I was really worried about the ultimate being really powerful as well. However, from what I can see and what we get shown, it actually looks quite well balanced. It is powerful, but the thing that sort of counteracts it is its ability time. So Yoru's ultimate ability is called Dimensional Drift. He basically puts a mask on, he goes onto a different dimension, and he's unable to be seen by enemy players, and he also appears to not be affected by any of the enemy's abilities or gunfire. You may sort of think straight away, oh, actually that's really powerful. Not only are they invisible, but they're immune to damage and abilities. That's ridiculously powerful. Now, it is quite powerful, but the ability is only actually active for about sort of 5 to 6 seconds, so it doesn't allow for some ridiculous play where you can literally go invisible, run all the way around the back of the enemy, run up behind them, stab them all in the back of the head, and win the game and get an ace with a knife. It doesn't seem like that sort of ability. It seems quite a short, like quick play kind of ultimate. It seems very powerful, but it doesn't seem overpowered. And with how powerful I sort of feel its other abilities are, I feel like it's quite a well-balanced character for what we can see. But obviously, only time will tell when we actually get to play him and see how powerful he actually is. So the last big change that seems to be sort of coming our way for episode 2 is basically to do with competitive, the way that we're ranked, the way that we sort of see our own ranks as well, but also the way that we can sort of pop up and down. So the main things to note now that Radiant players are now the top 500 per region, whereas before it used to be the top 200. So that obviously opens up the leaderboards a lot more for a lot more competitive side of things, as the esports side of Valorant is slowly growing and gaining more interest. So one of the main changes that is coming to competitive is more just actually a bit of clarity. So the one thing that currently happens at the moment is that when you have like either a good game or a bad game, you just get some little green arrows or some little red arrows sort of suggesting that you've done well or you've done really badly and that your rank's going to go down. Now, if you've got 2 brain cells, you can pretty much see that, okay, I've won the game, I've got a decent KD, and I got a couple of diffusers in there, so I know that I've had a decent performance. Or actually, I've just lost 13-0. I had 0 kills and 24 deaths, and I got 0 plants and diffusers. You know that you've had a bad game. You don't need a few little arrows to tell you that that's the case. What Valorant is now bringing in is basically almost like a progress bar. So as before, it used to basically just tell you your rank and then have a green arrow saying that you are doing well and you're going up the rank. But you never really knew how far away from the next rank above or below you actually were. So now with this progress bar, it sort of suggests, okay, actually, well, I've only got a little gap to go. I can see that I'm not too far off the next rank above. So one really good game, put in a really good shift, and I know that I'm going to go up, and vice versa. Actually, my rank's really quite low towards the bottom. If I have a bad game, I know that I'm probably going to get demoted. So the important thing with this is it's just a bit more clarity as opposed to sort of guessing, oh, okay, I've had like 2 decent games in a row. Am I going to go up a rank? I don't know. Now, with the progress bar, hopefully that'll be clearer to see. Now, I'll go through on how the rank rating works in just a second, but another little thing to note is that for Iron to Diamond players, that'll stay the same, and then anything above that will basically be Immortal and Radiant. So before there used to be Immortal, ranks 1 to 3. That's now gone, and you're either Immortal or Radiant, and basically the way that you'll view it is you won't have a progress bar, you'll be on a leaderboard, so you'll be able to see if you're in the sort of esports scene, you'll be able to see against other players. So how does the Valorant rank rating work? Well, basically the mass majority of your points comes from match outcome, so fundamentally you just need to be winning the most games, and generically you're going up the ranks. Now I really like this with Valorant being a team game, because you'll always get teammates sacrificing themselves. They won't necessarily get the kills, but they'll have a massive impact on the outcome of the game. They'll be making plays, they'll be forcing the opposition in a certain way, they'll be making big clutches, but they may not be getting aces every single round. So for it to be mainly based on wins and losses, I think is really good, and it really promotes that team play, as opposed to, oh, I want to get all 5 kills, the rest of you go wait in the lobby. Now, the way that sort of the rank rating works for wins and losses is that on a win, you'll gain anywhere between 10 rank rating points and 50 rank rating. This is basically based on how dominant your victory is. So, for example, if you literally destroy the team 13-0, you will get the maximum of 50 rank rating. Whereas if it's a bit of a closer match and maybe you win sort of 13-10 or maybe 13-12, you're going to get sort of a bit lower, and it's going to be on sort of the 10 rating. On the flip side of that, a loss can be anywhere between a loss of 0 points and 30 points. So again, that's going to be based on how sort of big your loss has been. Now, I quite like the fact that for a win you can get up to 50 points, and for a loss you get an absolute maximum of 30 points, because it sort of, I think it sort of helps to prevent that sort of yo-yoing effect. One thing that I found is that I'll have one good game and I'll go straight up to a rank, and then I'll have a sort of an average game afterwards and I'll drop straight back down a rank, and then it will just yo-yo up and down, and it won't be a consistent rank for a prolonged period of time, which I think is quite annoying to sort of judge where you're at. So to add to that sort of yo-yoing effect, Riot Games have basically changed it so that you have to lose when you're at 0 rank rating for that particular rank. So basically you have to be at the lowest score for that rank, and then you have to lose and go negative. So basically what this means is to get demoted you have to lose at least 2 games in a row, which I think is really good, because it sort of, again, it prevents that yo-yoing of going up and down, so at least it's going to be up for at least 2 games, and then if they are bad games, then you're going to go straight back down where you belong. Another thing that's been brought in as well, when you're in the lower ranks, your individual performance is taken into consideration and helps you earn rank faster. So if you're a ridiculously good player, you're going to absolutely fly through the ranks. Now, I think that's really good for the players that aren't quite as good. Maybe they're quite new to the game and they're still trying to get to grips with it. You're not going to come across these players that should blatantly be in Immortal or Radiant as often. Now, you may still come across it because obviously they need to increase their rank, but it's going to reduce it because they're only going to be there for a couple of games. They're going to have a couple of good games and they're going to be way above your rank, which I think is really good, considering a lot of pro players end up having sort of Smurf accounts to sort of practice on. Their Smurf accounts are going to absolutely fly up the ranks, and they're going to be way out of your way, and you can just sit there and enjoy the game and try to learn it and try to improve. Overall, I'm really excited about the new episodes. I think the patch notes are really sort of well thought out and they're really well balanced. They're making me really excited to play as well, so I can't wait to crack on. Hopefully I'll catch you guys soon. Thanks for watching.